Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Viper Strike 95. And today we're back here with another of our game day flights for this week. This week we decided to head down south of the U.S. border, and we're into Mexico today. We're here at Mexico City, right at Benito Juarez International Airport here in beautiful Mexico City. And today we're going to be covering the biggest game in Mexican football, CD Guadalajara versus Club America. Now, background between these two, of course, these two clubs are the two biggest clubs in Mexican football, with rich histories and rich legacies and histories of football here in Mexico. One represents the wealthy, rich Club America, the wealthy in the establishment. The other, of course, is the more working class. And more specifically, Guadalajara also fields players only from Mexico. So, very interesting rivalry and very passionate and rich fan bases, of course. And our flight plan is going to be a pretty stunning one, too. Mexico is a very stunning place to fly, so I'm very excited to show you guys what we're doing here today. So before we get started, I do want to say hello to everyone in chat, all the lurkers and stuff. I hope you're all having a good week. Hope you all had a good week. So, some pretty big stuff going on, of course, this week. We got some pretty big events and all that in the flight sim community. So here's our flight plan for this afternoon stream, for this afternoon. So we're going to start our trip here at Benito Juarez International Airport. We'll fly around into downtown Mexico City. We're going to fly over the Plaza de Constitution, where you can find all that there. Then from there, we'll head down southeast. We'll be flying over the current ground of Club America, the Estadio Ciudad de los Deportes, where they currently play right now. Then we'll fly south and we'll pay a visit to Estadio Bonote, and that is the Estadio Azteca. This is the current home ground of Club America. They're playing one of the largest stadiums in the world, especially for football, of course, for soccer. Then from there, we'll head our way down west. We'll head our way over to Toluca, the defending Mexican champions, Toluca, at the Estadio Nemesio Diaz. Then we'll head up west, and we'll make our way to our first stop in 84 nautical miles to General Francisco G. Munguia International Airport outside of Morelia. So that will be our first stop. Stop number 2, of course, is flying over from Morelia over to Mike 1 Papa. And that will be our second stop just outside of Lago de Chapala. And then from there, our last leg will take us into the city of Guadalajara. We'll fly over the Estadio Jalisco, the current ground of Guadalajara's biggest rival, Atlas. Then we'll fly into downtown center of Guadalajara. And then finally, of course, we'll make our way to the Estadio Akron, the home of Chivas. Then we'll make our way to our final stop at Mike Zulu Papa. So that's going to be the final leg. So that's all 3 legs into greater detail. So you guys will now know. So here's the Discord for information. We have the information about the Derby itself and why it was such a big deal in Mexico, of course. These two have been rivals in Mexico for years, and this is a very historic matchup for Mexico. And I think Mexican football is a very underrated league, actually. Very underrated league. Some really great talents have played in the Mexican league. So one interesting thing about the Mexican League, of course, in terms of background for this upcoming game, of course, they're playing in the Clausura League, which is the second half of the league. the second half of this 25-26 season, of course. They played in the previous league season, the Apachura, which is their other half of the league. So they're playing in Clausura, which is the second part, and Guadalajara is first. They've won all 5 of their matches so far this year for Guadalajara. Club America is in 8th place. They're 8th right now with just 8 points. They're 7 points behind the league leaders, Guadalajara. So this could be a very big match, whether that final puts things back in the right direction for Club America, or Chivas is going to continue to dominate. So should be a good matchup, of course. We're flying the Plus PC6 Porter here today. So we're flying the Porter. I thought I'd taken it because I still want to go around 140, 150 knots. But we're also going through high altitude because we're in this part of Mexico. So we're going to take the Plus PC6 Porter. So we're going to get her up and going. We're getting her on. So for our first part of Mexico City, we'll fly around 8,500 feet and fly around the first part of Mexico City. So we'll fly around 8,500 feet. So everything's going pretty smoothly. And we're going to, our heading's going to be 263 degrees. So we're going to go ahead and taxi. Our heading is 263 degrees, so. And yes, Mexico City's airport, this is actually one of the busiest 2-runway airports in the world. Benito Juarez, very busy Mexican airport. Very busy. So we're going to go ahead and turn. Roll down the power a little bit. Gotta reduce it. So we're about to fly into Mexico City, of course. So we're going to be flying into the center of Mexico City. That'll be our first thing we'll be doing. So if you guys don't know about Mexico City, of course, a little bit of background. This is by far the largest city in Mexico, and it's one of the most populous city here in North America. Population of around 9.2 million people in the city proper, but in its metro area, it can expand up to a colossal in its urban area, 23 million people live in this city, which is absolutely insane. And what makes this even more insane, this city is also about 7,300 feet above sea level. So in fact, this city is higher in elevation than Denver. So, which is pretty crazy to think about. So, very big city, of course. Mexico City is massive. Huge city with a long history, of course. It's also the oldest capital city in the Americas, and one of only two founded by indigenous peoples, because this used to be Tenochtitlan, which was the Aztec capital, believe it or not, which is the Aztec capital of the Aztecs. Yes, this city used to be where the Aztecs originated from. But of course, the Spaniards conquered this city during their conquest of the Aztecs in the 1520s. So this is Independence Square. So this is where the city square is located, here in Mexico. One very interesting thing about Mexico City, of course. One very interesting thing about Mexico City, of course, is Mexico City has a ton of culture, of course. There's plenty of art museums here. Tons of museums, of course. All sorts. And of course, it's rich in theater, art, and entertainment. But of course, the big thing about people love about Mexico is the cuisine. And Mexico City is where some of the freshest in seafood and fish in the interior of Mexico. And tons of cuisines all throughout Mexico City. And again, Mexican cuisine is very diverse and very colorful too. So if you love food, Mexico City is a great food city. It's an excellent place for food. I'll tell you that much. Never really been to Mexico City. The closest I've been to Mexico City is Puerto Vallarta is probably the closest place I've been to Mexico City. So. But beautiful area, of course. Absolutely huge city, of course, and a massive one in that. So right here is the current ground of Club America. This is they're actually temporarily playing here, the Estadio Ciudad. They're temporarily playing here because of Club America's renovations for the upcoming World Cup. So they're going to have to play quite a few of their matches there. So once the Estadio Azteca finally gets renovation, of course, they'll finally be able to play there again. And speaking about the Estadio Azteca, we're going to be flying over here now. Once we get done with this, we're going to be heading up to 12,500 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the 12,500 feet elevation we need to go to for our next leg. So we'll get that set up for when we need to go up into the altitude, of course. Once there, we can start finally talking about it. I want to get through this area first. So we're about to enter into the Estadio Azteca soon for that. So we'll be heading to the Azteca soon, the biggest stadium in all of Mexico, and Azteca is a massive ground. It's actually one of the few places that has hosted multiple World Cup finals, both in 1970 and 1986. And it's now going to host several games during the 2026 World Cup. So we're about to see the Estadi Azteca straight ahead of us. Sadly, they don't have any landmark POIs here in Mexico, which is a real shame because I would love to see a Mexico update, because Mexico is such a really cool place. I mean, they already got Canada and the United States already in the sim, but not Mexico. So there it is, guys, the Estadi Azteca, the home of both Club America and the Mexican national team, play at the Azteca. And we're finally going to climb, so. And we're going to go ahead and climb up to 12,500 feet. So this is going to take some bit of climbing. So we're going to finally climb. And yeah, this city is extremely high altitude, too. One other really cool thing, though, about Mexico City, and what's really cool about this place, is, of course, Mexico City has several other clubs. I know Club America is by far the most important club in the city, but they also have a couple of other ones. Cruz Azul, another historic club, founded back in 1927, is another popular club. And the Olympic Stadium, well, it's home to Pumas, actually, or Club Universidad Nacional AC, or Pumas, plays in the Olympic Stadium. And they're part of the big four clubs in Mexico, traditional big four clubs in Mexico. Baseball's also played here too, home to the Mexico City Red Devils, used to be of the Mexican League. So they have quite a few sports. It's even hosted the NBA G League as well. So definitely pretty cool though. Mexico City's plenty of sports, lots of culture. Tourism's a big deal too. Mexico City is just a really neat place. If it wasn't for crime, I would probably love to visit the city. But I know it's reduced in quite a few years, of course. Hey, good to see you, Pytot. Oh my goodness, you're actually right. You know, yes, thank you for nosing that. I forgot the Pytot too. Viper, you blittering Egypt. Well, we'll fix it when we land, of course. We'll fix it when we land in General Marilia. Thank you for pointing that out. I guess I wasn't doing a good enough job when I was checking the plane. I thought I forgot something. Thank you for noticing that. Well, thankfully, I'm going to tell you guys on the flight sim when we get to 12,500 feet. I'll tell you what type of speed we're going through. So don't worry, but thank you for pointing it out. Such a blithering idiot. So, but thank you for pointing that out. It'll be fixed when we get to land here. And I'll fix that almost immediately. So, we're about 12,500. And I'll keep the speed around 140, 150 knots, so we'll be keeping it that way too. So we're cruising about 155 knots here, for about 156 knots here on our ground speed according to my nav map. So at least I have the plane's airspeed on my nav map. So we're going about 155 knots. So don't worry if you see this, I'll tell you how fast we're going. So our route today is going to be here, exclamation point route. So let's go ahead and talk about let's talk about our historic rivalry for today, the El Super Clasico, the biggest match in Mexican football, between the two Mexican giants of Club America and Guadalajara. This major matchup is the biggest rivalry in Mexican football and one of the biggest in world football. They feature the two most successful clubs in Mexican football in terms of championships. Club America has won 16, and Guadalajara trails them behind them with 12 championships. And they're often identified with their respective histories. Club America with the well-being establishment. Guadalajara are exclusively known for exclusively fielding Mexican players, the only club in the country to field just Mexican-only talents. And both clubs are the league's most supported, and their extensive fan base is not just across Mexico, but even the US. One interesting fun fact about this rivalry, of course, it's the only derby in the world that's been showcased in two different continental tournaments, in both the Copa Libertadores in South America and the CONCACAF Champions Cup, making it, that's right, in both North and South America, making this an extremely unique rivalry compared to many others in the Americas. As of September 13, 2025, Club America leads all time with the results with 99 wins to Guadalajara's 81, with 82 matches ending in a draw. So this is a relatively close derby, but Club America seems to have the advantage historically in the derby. Of course, there have been many Super Clásicos, including the one we covered earlier in the series. For 2025, we covered the big one in Buenos Aires between Boca Juniors and River Plate. So this is another Super Clásico, only this time it's Club America and Guadalajara. Very huge rivalry, of course. Very big deal. So the history of the Super Clásico, the first confrontation between these two pauper clubs, actually dates back to a victory with Guadalajara 1-0, was their first ever meeting back in the Copa Mexico in 1943, which is the Mexican Cup, by the way. However, what really flourished was after the second match of this rivalry, when Chivas defeated Club America 7-2 in 1943, and while the defeat sparked embarrassment within the ranks of Club America, it didn't take until 2 decades before this rivalry became the Clásico it was known today. You see, initially, it was Club America that actually struggled in the Mexican League. And halfway through the 1957-58 tournament, of course, Club America had only managed to win 6 points, placed them last, in danger of finishing lower. They hired Fernando Marcos, a retired player, and Marcos transformed this team into a contender for the Mexican title. And although the Club America's level rose, Chivas was playing tactical football and was giving them good results. And Chivas during the 1956 have won 6 straight titles. Building up Chivas as a dominant club in Mexico, and the 50s and late 50s and mid 60s were the most dominant era in Chivas' history, winning 7 of their 12 league titles during that era, only being interrupted twice by Zacatepec and Club Deportivo Oro, by the two Mexican clubs that disrupted their dominance in the 50s. However, Club America would then try to challenge them in recent years. Of course, by the 1980s, Mexican football had completely evolved during that time. The period of football domination between two teams was certainly over. Although parity was never truly achievable, it was much more evenly distributed in the football clubs in the top flight of Mexico. So Mexico has a lot more parity compared to that of some of the other leagues that we've covered. For example, Bayern Munich dominated Germany. Liga and Paris Saint-Germain dominated France. And of course, La Liga has Barcelona and Real Madrid. But Mexico, surprisingly, it's been much more even in Mexico. However, the 80s turned out to be the best decade in the history for Club America. Up to then, no club had managed to have the incredible success of Chivas, but Club America did so in the 1980s. 5 titles in 5 years, starting in 1984, a series of 3 straight titles, followed by 2 straight titles in 1988. And despite consistency for both Chivas and Club America, after Club America's glorious years in line of Chivas' golden age, the two teams have only managed to ironically win 4 titles between them during this time. But of course, one of the most notable moments in this rivalry occurred during the semifinals of the 1982-83 season, where players of both teams sparked a brawl known as the La Bronca del 83, the Riot of 83, which resulted in Chivas going on to play Puebla in the finals by eliminating Club America during that playoff. In the next year, Club America tried to get revenge, and they ended up succeeding to defeat Chivas in the 1983-84 final, and Club America got its revenge. In the years between 1983 and 2000, Club America showed dominance over Chivas, recorded an impressive record of only 6 losses out of the 43 matches against them. Now, the 2000s proved to be a really interesting era for the Super Classico. One of the more interesting ones was during the 2005 Classico tournament. And it ended up being, it was evenly matched and it went to 3-3, and it ended up resulting in a 3-3 tie. But it was close into the very end, of course. In 2007, Club America set the record for the most wins in the year by defeating Chivas 4 times. And lastly, in 2016, Club America and Guadalajara recorded a record 7 times between league matches in their semifinal in the Copa Mexico. And Club America came ahead with 3 victories, 2 draws, and 2 defeats in their 2016 meeting. And of course, they dominated Chivas in the playoffs. So that's a bit of the history of Mexico's El Super Clasico, here about Mexico's great rivalry, of course. A very proud and passionate rivalry, of course. But there were plenty of duels, of course, in the 1970s and 80s, of course. This is a classic rivalry and one of the big ones in the Americas. So this is Toluca. We've been flying over here. So Toluca's home ground, of course. They were the defending Mexican champions of the Clausura, which, if you guys know, that was the first half of the season. That was the first tournament of the 25-26 season, and they were the defending champs of that Mexican tournament, of course. So, big deal here, of course. We're about to go here for a bit. But Mexico League, definitely very interesting. Now, so about the Mexican League as well, there's 18 teams in the Mexican League. There's currently, it's the first level of the period, of course. And in fact, it's actually the top league in CONCACAF's league ranking index. So it's the strongest league in the CONCACAF, just above the MLS, of course, and it's only ranked just slightly ahead of the MLS in the United States, of course. And we'll get to the MLS a bit too when we do it, of course. But yeah, it's the strongest league in North America, in the northern half, just barely beating out the MLS just by a couple hundred points, and definitely considerably ahead of the Canadian League. Now, of course, in terms of the Mexican League, another interesting thing about Liga MX, of course, is it's just like the Argentine League. Like the Argentine League, they have 2 short tournaments with 2 champions a season, just like in Argentina. And the season starts from the first part of the season opens from July to December, and the second part from January to May is their season, of course. So, very similar to the Argentine League in terms of how it's structured and all that, of course. In terms of some of the competing clubs, of course, we know Club America and Guadalajara, the two ones we're doing here today. But there's several other important Mexican clubs that are very important. In fact, Guadalajara and Club America are the only two clubs in the Mexican League that have never been relegated. Are the two Mexican, actually one of only 3 clubs in Mexico that have never been relegated, or 4 clubs. Toluca have never been relegated since their first appearance in the Mexican League in 1953. UNAM had never been relegated since their first appearance in the Mexican League in 1962. And Cruz Azul has never been relegated since 1964. Nearly every other club in Mexico has been relegated at least once. So very important clubs. And in terms of champions, of course, Club America and Guadalajara are top 2, but surprisingly, Toluca, the defending champions of Apertura, have actually tied with Guadalajara in terms of Mexican titles. Then after that, number 4, the 4th most successful club in terms of league titles is Cruz Azul. And at 5th, it's a tie between Leon and Tigres with 8. So some important stuff about the Mexican title, of course. Some very important stuff. And there's been some really impressive Mexican talents that have played in the Liga MX. Some amazing talents, of course. So lots of really notable clubs and stuff. Like I said, the Mexican League is kind of overlooked for a lot of people. Like a lot of the North American leagues are overlooked for a lot of Europe, obviously. So the top talents are in Europe, but the North American leagues like MLS and the Mexican League are kind of overlooked, even among the Americas. Because when you think of leagues in the Americas, you think of Brazil's league, the Serie A, or Argentina with its Argentina Premier Division. And I think the North American leagues kind of get overlooked a bit. But they have produced some really neat talents over the years, of course. So in terms of Flight Sim community, of course, this week, later today, Tuto Murphy will be back on later today for his stream in the Pyrenees flight in the Corvallis. He'll be taking it from France over to Bilbao, from LFMP to Bilbao. So should be some fun flights in the beautiful Pyrenees. Should be an absolutely stunning flight. I did a whole flight in the Pyrenees a while back in MSF 2024. Stunning area, of course. Beautiful areas here. Stunning area, of course. So, absolutely stunning area. Murph will be back on later today. On Saturday, of course, Allison Johnson's going to be back for another round of her Around the World flight with Jennifer Murray. She'll be doing a helicopter flight from Narsarsuaq to Kulusuk. So she's going to return for another leg into Greenland, of course. Should be a really interesting flight through the coastline of Greenland. Should be another great flight into Greenland. The coastline should be very interesting how she managed through the Greenland coast. But at least with that, it should make it easy, not too difficult to get to Iceland. So should be a lot of fun, of course, to do some helicopter flying, obviously. So that would be for this week's community with Ali and Murphy, of course. In terms of other stuff, other news, of course, for other flight sim content and other news. Some big ones, of course. The PMDG family has been all but fully released. The 600 just got released for PMDG. I might be tempted to grab it because A, it's about $3-4. And the other one too is, I mean, I don't really need the 700 as I already got the 800 model. And more importantly too, Again, no, I don't really need the 900 or the 700. But the 600 is a little unique because it's the least popular 737 variant. But the 600 would be really neat because it would probably take the role of a regional jet. And I think this would be taking a role similar to a regional jet. Because if I look at the variants, the 600 can carry around 103 passengers and can take off within 4,300 feet, much less than the 800 or all that. Versus an Embraer E195, which actually the 737-600 is actually similar to an E195. It's actually just a bit shorter. So that way I get something that's like a regional jet. Because the 600, because the 800 can carry, which feels more like a proper big jet. The 600 actually feels like one of these little regional jets. It's just it can carry more passengers, but they're more similar in many ways to what an E-jet is like. Just a bit more range, just a bit more passengers, just a more powerful Embraer E195. And I can use that for a lot of the smaller routes. So I might grab my hand of the 600. The 800 could do basically everything else, but another one that should be interesting, of course, that I also interested in, of course. There's a new, there's one for San Juan, of course, that's coming out. And MMMX-MMMM beta starting this month, so should be pretty interesting though. But basically all the variants of the 737 are basically out, except for the 700. Of course, the 900 is a much longer variant. But again, I don't really need that one. But I can see the appeal of the little 600, of course. Much smaller, much easier to work with. So, we'll go through more of this, obviously. But yeah, I'm pretty excited, though. I might get the 600. So. And if I do get the 600, I'll be mainly using it for, like, the really small regional routes, like an E-jet would. Because that's probably what they built the 600 for, anyway. Yeah, it was meant to compete with the 717 and the BAE 146 with regional jet. Yeah, it's just a bit heavy for its capacity. But I can use it as a regional jet, which is perfect. I'm like, for example, if I'm doing out of Dallas, I could just use the 600 to do Dallas over to like Shreveport, or Dallas over to Tyler, or any of the less busy routes. I can use it for some of the really short ones. Or I could do Pittsburgh over to Harrisburg or something like that. Use that like a little regional jet. Would be really cool. So, like I said, the 737-600 should be pretty neat. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I might grab my hands on it. So our next thing we're going to be covered, of course, obviously, is some of the other news in terms of sports. Now, if you guys weren't aware, of course, for big news, the Super Bowl happened, and I'm going to be saying this. Thank freaking goodness that Super Bowl 60 ended up being a Seahawks victory. Seattle won its second ever Super Bowl, beating the Patriots 29-13, and it was complete control for the Seahawks for pretty much most of the game. The Seahawks absolutely took care of business throughout the entire game. Of course, Myers had a Super Bowl record 5 field goals, though he didn't win Super Bowl MVP. The running back did. If Kenneth Walker didn't have that great of a game, obviously, I would have probably given it to the kicker. But the game was truly over once the pick six happened at the end of in the fourth quarter, ended basically all of any chance for the Patriots to make any comeback. But yeah, Seattle won a title, which is absolutely amazing for Seahawks fans, of course. Massive win for the Seahawks. Happy for Sam Darnold. He finally gets his ring after being, for all these years of struggles, for much of his early half of his career, of course. But massive win for Sam Darnold. That was a massive win for him. Massive win for Sam Darnold, of course. I mean, the Vikings should have very well signed him, but he had a great career bounce back in his career. And he had a massive bounce back over the last few years. He had a massive bounce back after a very rough start to his career. Good for Sam Darnold. He finally got a ring. Connor Kupp also got a ring too, as well. Another ring to his resume for Connor Kupp. But I mean, this has definitely been a really good year. I think the Patriots could come back next season. It's just it won't be very easy. I mean, this year was particularly not very strong between the Chiefs struggling, the Bills choking in the playoffs, the Ravens didn't do so well, the Texans. I don't think the Patriots could come back, but who knows? Anything can happen. I would be more surprised if it did happen again. But of course, something that overtook the Super Bowl, of course, was the halftime show. Was a bit controversial for some people. So, pretty important stuff, of course, going on here as well. In terms of other major sport events, of course, this week, of course, got some pretty big stuff going on in our sports this year. Of course, the Olympics are going on for the 2026 Winter Olympics. Of course, is going on right as we speak. And so far, the country with the most medals this year has been Norway, actually, with 18 total medals, including so far a record 8 medals so far, 8 golds. Then we have the host of Italy with 18 medals. Not nearly as many gold medals, but they match it with the 9 bronze medals. And then the third is the United States with 14 medals total, including 14 medals. Then the country with the next most medals would be Austria with 12, then Japan and France tie with 10. So some pretty interesting things going on in the Winter Olympic Games, obviously. So Winter Olympics should be interesting, of course. Now here's the interesting though this weekend. There has been some really big matches I could have picked for game day flight. I think the most obvious one I could have picked, if it wasn't for this one, of course, would be the big matchup, of course, between which would have been Inter Juventus. That would have been the other game I would have played. But the reason I didn't pick Inter and Juve was because, while this was definitely one of the biggest rivalries in Italy, I wanted to give Mexican football a bit of a shout out since they would have been normally overlooked. And secondly, there was another matchup in Italy that I wanted to cover, and that is one we're definitely covering on this trip, the Derby della Madonnina, which is the Madrid-Milan derby between Inter and AC, and that one I think would be very interesting to cover in this series. So that is why we're not doing Inter Juve, and I think it would be great to give Mexican football a bit of a shout out for this series, obviously. So we're going to get closer to our first stop of the day. I'll land and take the pitot off, so we'll get that fixed up and get going. So in terms of other big games this weekend for for soccer, of course, a big matchup, of course, one very big one this weekend. Inter Juve would be one of the biggest matchups this week. Another really fun one this weekend, of course, Real Madrid and Real Sociedad should be a good one. Sociedad's been on a roll since they hired the American manager, Matanzaro, and of course, Real Madrid's the biggest club in Spain. Always a good one this weekend. One very fun matchup that I think would be really cool is in Portugal, actually in France. Marseille and Strasbourg should be fun. Always should be a good match in Marseille. Of course, the FA Cup's more this weekend. We got more FA Cup matchups on Saturday. One I would be pretty interested to see, of course, in the FA Cup. Will Liverpool lose in the FA Cup again to Brighton? Should be interesting to see. Sunday also has Napoli and Roma. That should be pretty fun for Central and South Italy. So some pretty fun sport events, of course, and Sunday's FA Cup action mainly has some pretty fun stuff too. Like I said, some pretty fun matchups. In basketball, of course, the NBA, there wasn't too much this weekend, of course, for the NBA. Mainly, it's the All-Star weekend for the NBA. The NBA is going to the All-Star weekend. And it's mainly NBA All-Star weekend this upcoming week. So, some pretty big All-Stars, of course, in the National Basketball League, the National Basketball Association. We might cover the NBA Finals this year, of course, on this series. So some pretty big stuff going on, of course. And here's the scenery out this morning, of course, some really pretty scenery here in this part of Mexico. But yeah, Mexico has so much geographic diversity. I mean, this is a country with tons of geographic diversity. You got center part here has got mountains and stuff. More northern, you got desert around the northern parts. You got rainforest in much of the lower elevations. And eastern part is tropical rainforest. You have beaches around the Cabo St. Louis. You got beaches all over those regions. There's so much diversity of scenery here in Mexico. Tons and tons of diversity of great scenery in this country. And oh yeah, the best part about Mexico, of course, has got to be the food, of course. Mexican cuisine is one of the world's great cuisines, is Mexican cuisine. And contrary to what many people believe, Mexican cuisine is not all tacos and stuff. is extremely rich from its Native American indigenous heritage with the Olmec, Aztec, and Mayans, along with food brought in from the Spanish conquest, like foods like beef, pork, chicken, goat, sheep, and dairy products, and various fruits. They created a very unique cuisine, and it's a big part of Mexican culture. But Mexican cuisine, very diverse, and they got tons of regional foods all over Mexico. There's no shortage of amazing dishes to pick. So, gotta love Mexico. Great food and all that, too. So we'll be landing here very soon. I'm going to go ahead and drop down in altitude. We're about to arrive in our final first stop. We're going to send to around 7,500 feet. So we're going to go ahead and put estimate 7,500. That should give us enough clearance, and we're going to descend. And we're going to descend this kind of slowly. So we're going to go ahead and into it. But we are going to descend a little slowly. So our first stop is Mike. Morelia Airport. So we'll sit here, and once we land, I'll take the pitot off, and then we'll talk about Club America. For this leg, we'll talk all about Club America, one of Mexico's most well-known clubs. So we'll get to talk about them pretty soon. So as for next week, of course, as for the next stream, of course, on Sunday is going to be our next national park in the series. We'll be covering Bryce Canyon in Utah. Yes, it's not very far from Zion National Park. It's just to the northeast of Zion. So we'll be covering our flight for that series. So this should be a lot of fun. Bryce should be a very fun national park to cover. So outside of that, of course, our next game day flight will be on the February 20th. And the one I picked is of course, the North London Derby between Tottenham and Arsenal. Should be a very fun matchup and a very fun derby matchup. It was either that one or Red Star versus Partizan in Serbia. I ultimately chose Hotspur and Arsenal. Should be a massive game, of course. It's very better English derby in the nation's capital, of course, of London. Should be a pretty good one, though. Looking forward to that one when it comes. And then after that, though, the 27th is going to be and finally, for the 27th of February, it is going to be Rangers and Celtic, the Old Firm in Scotland. I bet a lot of people in Scotland are going to be looking forward to that matchup. It was tough because Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich was going to be there, and Orlando City, Inter Miami is also there too. Maybe we get to talk about Messi and Inter Miami. Should be plenty of fun. But I ultimately decided, go to Scotland, of course. And I got a fun flight planned for Scotland. And all Scottish affair too, so we'll get down here very soon. So we'll set this slowly. So one very interesting thing about Mexico, of course, is its unique cuisine, of course. So really cool stuff. But like that, Mexican cuisine, very very important. So we're about to descend. We're going to make our way down over to our first stop. So guys, thank you for coming here today on this Friday afternoon stream. We'll talk about Club America as soon as we get up. Of course, I have a major thing to fix. So here we go, guys. We're about to make our landing here. Beautiful scenery here today in this part of Mexico. Absolutely pretty. So one of the big things I do want to talk about Mexico, of course, is really Mexico's diversity. Mexico, after all, is home to hundreds of different indigenous groups, of course. Its population is massive. 129 million people live in Mexico. It's the most populous Spanish-speaking country in the world is here in Mexico. There are 48 metro areas. We know Mexico City is by far the largest area in Mexico. Then after that, we have Monterrey. And then Guadalajara is going to be third with 5 million people. But Mexico has been extremely diverse. Tons of different, not only ethnicities, but also languages. While Spanish is spoken by the vast majority of people, there is also lots of indigenous languages, including that of Nahuatl, Yucatec Mayan, Tezatl and Tezatl, still Mayan languages, and more. Tons of different languages and cultures here in Mexico. Mexico, rich history, rich culture, rich traditions. The only issue Mexico I'm more and more worried is crime, because that's the only sad thing is that the cartels have been a big problem in Mexico, sadly. And that probably scares more than a few people from ever visiting Mexico. Which is a real shame, because Mexico has basically everything else you would want in a country. Rich culture, rich traditions, lots of diversity, and all that. So here we go, guys, our first landing. And we'll stop here. And yes, we'll fix the Pi.2 situation. Let me go ahead and fix it. There we go. There we go. Typhon, I fixed it. I don't want to get too much into politics, but look, I don't like what ICE is doing, but I'm going to be honest. The cartels are a million times worse. The cartels are much worse. But I don't want to get too much into politics, so I'm going to be avoiding that right now, okay? So I'm being honest. That's so. So we're going to go ahead and prepare for the next leg soon. We'll begin up in a minute. We'll talk about Club America as we, our next leg, our altitude is going to take us to 11,000 feet. So we'll fly 11,000 feet to our next destination at Mike 1 Papa. So that will be our next stop. So we're going to go ahead and prepare for the next leg. Let's go ahead and get to our next leg. So if you guys want to fly along, we're in the Southeast Asian server. So if you guys want to fly along, so let's go ahead and talk about Club America, of course. One of the biggest clubs here in Mexico, of course. Club America have been founded back in 1916 on October 12th. It will turn 110 this upcoming year. This legendary club in Mexico City has been nicknamed Las Aguilas, the Eagles, and it has been owned since 1959 by the mass media company Televisa, which is the largest in Latin America, and they play their games at the Estadio Azteca, the largest stadium in Latin America and one of the world's largest. They're one of the founding members of the Liga MX, of the Primera Division, and they have a long rivalry with Guadalajara. And Club America is one of the big four traditional clubs in Mexico. And it's one of the most valuable clubs in North America, estimated to be around $770 million, making it one of the most valuable clubs in North America. In terms of domestic, they've won more titles than any other team in Mexican football, including a record 16 league titles, 6 Copa Mexico titles, and joint 7 champion of champions, which is the Super Cup. Internationally, they've won 10 FIFA recognized club trophies, the most from a club from North America, the CONCACAF, including a joint record 7 CONCACAF Champion League titles, one CONCACAF Giants Cup, which is their and two Copa Interamericas, which was between CONCACAF and the ones from South America. So they're one of the most important clubs in all of North America. They're not just one of the most prestigious clubs in Mexico. They're one of the biggest clubs in North America. So that's why they earned that name, by the way, too. So they have quite a few nicknames, of course, throughout their history. Club America's had several important nicknames, of course. They've always been given a number of nicknames throughout the years, including the Estudiantes, because in the early years it was established by merger from students between Mascarones and La Perpetua. As a result, for many students, of course. Of course, they used to be given the nickname the Creams and the Asian Creams due to their kit colors. However, the club got its infamous nickname in the 60s when fellow businessman Emilio Milno purchased the club, and it was given its infamous nickname the Millionetas, the Millionaires. In an effort to change the fortune of the club, which has been struggling, Milno made it prioritize a lot of foreign signings of foreign players and executives. Of course, in the 1980s, they got their current nickname, the Eagles, as a result of a rebranding and media campaign undertaken by Televisa in 1981. So they introduced the brand new nickname, which is still now the main nickname to this day for Club America. So, one interesting thing about the club, of course, is its crest and colors. Of course, So one interesting thing about the club crest of Club America, of course, was when the club was founded back in 1916. Club America the crest consisted of a C for club and an A for America. However, over a couple of times, it was reverted back to Club America in the 20s. However, what ended up changing their crest, of course, was during the 20s. They changed it to having a crest with the map of the Americas in it, encasing the football in the team colors, which was originally cream and blue at the time, but it changed more to yellow, which is still now the crest to this day. It's very similar to the one in the picture, of course. is Club America, which is still pretty much similar to the original. And the colors were originally took cream and blue because it was his father's navy blue trousers and a yellow cream shirt. And it would go pretty much unchanged until the 1980s when they changed it from cream to a more vibrant yellow and blue. So that is the colors in the crest for Club America, of course, the iconic yellow and blue that everyone in Mexico would immediately recognize as the club colors. Is the unique crest colors, of course, the yellow blue. So, one interesting thing is the they play at the Estadio Azteca, the proud stadium of not just Club America, it's also been the home for Cruz Azul and Mexico's national team. This is one of the biggest stadiums in the world. It seats 87,000 people, and it's built 7,200 feet above sea level. It's the largest stadium in Latin America and the 8th largest soccer stadium in the world. And it's one of the world's most iconic venues. It's the first stadium to have hosted 2 FIFA World Cup finals back in 1970, which Brazil defeated Italy, and in 1986, where Argentina defeated West Germany. It also hosted the 1986 quarterfinal match between Argentina and England, where Diego Maradona scored his infamous Hand of God goal in the goal of the century. And it's the only football stadium where both Pele and Maradona won the World Cup. So, it even hosted the game of the century in 1970, where Italy beat Germany 4-3 in extra time. And again, it's going to be back. It also hosted the Summer Olympics in 1968. And now it's going to host games during the 2026 FIFA World Cup. So it's going to be back for a 3rd time around. But this legendary ground was opened all the way back in 1966. And not only does it has hosted many soccer matches or football, it's hosted American football games, including upcoming for 2026, 27 and 28 for some NFL matches. It's hosted plenty of concerts over the years, including that of U2, Paul McCartney, Bad Bunny has now hosted events, and several more are being hosted in Azteca. So lots of different events, but this is a very proud stadium, of course. It's currently undergoing renovations for the new World Cup, but the Estadio Azteca definitely is a modern, definitely a very historic ground, not just for Club America, but for Mexico. So this ground is a huge deal if you're a Mexican sports fan. This is a very important ground. Of course, we all know they're El Super Clasico, but they have 2 more important rivalries, and they're both within Mexico City. One is with Pumas, or Club Universidad Nacional, the Clásico Capitano, in the Clásico Joven with Cruz Azul. So, of course, the Capitano rivalry is both teams are Mexico City, and this one is particularly fierce with Puma's side of things because many of their supporters choose America as their #1 rival. Now, of course, this derby particularly started back in 1962. And both grounds are only separated by a whole 1.5 miles, by 1.1 miles. So far, though, America has won the Derby 59 times out of the whole Derby. They won 59 times, with Pumas only winning 39 of those games during their matchups all throughout the Derby, of course. But this is still pretty important, though, in Mexico. The other one is Clásico Joven with Cruz Azul, known as the Young Classic, in which there is similar perspective. America has represented the wealthy, while Cruz Azul is representing the working class. And Cruz Azul has had a pretty intense derby. Club America has won the vast majority of its 204 meetings with 74 wins in the rivalry. Cruz Azul has won, in terms of rivalries, of course, 74 wins, 62 wins for Cruz Azul, and 68 draws in all matches, of course. But this rivalry has been played multiple times throughout the years, of course. So, very important rivalries here in Mexico. Club America is the most supported club in the country. 25% of Mexicans supported during a popular survey in 2013. It was the country's most popular club. About 1/4 of all people in Mexico have supported Club America, and is the most popular in the city. And then in the 2015 poll, it was the most popular club in Mexico. 31% of people supported Club America, more than their rivals Guadalajara and Cruz Azul put together. Not only, in fact, its social media fan base is absolutely huge. It's third in largest in all Latin American social media presence, behind the Brazilian sites of Flamengo and Corinthians. And we covered the latter in our series in the previous match day thing. America is also popular in the U.S., funnily enough. Club America is also very popular in the USA, believe it or not. Which I know is crazy to think that they're popular in the U.S., but a lot of people kind of forget there is a significant Mexican population here in the country. In fact, according to a 2020 survey, Club America is the 9th most popular team in the U.S., and they're the only non-European club that's in the top 10 most popular soccer clubs in the United States. That's right, this club right here. So, yes, they are a very popular club here in the States, fun enough. And of course, with all that support, they're also the most hated team in Mexico, ranking first in that metric in every survey, especially after the club was bought in 1959 by that media mogul, Emilio Milno. But of course, the fans of Club America also embraced being hated. So, absolutely huge, of course. Massive fan base. In terms of their club honors, of course, here's their club honors for you guys here. 16 Division Premier Liga MX titles. Their records. 6 Copa Mexicos, of course. 7 Super Cups of the Campeón de Campeones. And they even won a La Liga MX Super Cup in 2024. Internationally, they actually won the Copa Interamerica twice, which is basically similar to the Intercontinental Cup, but instead it's North and South America going against each other. They won the CONCACAF Champions Cup 7 times, most recently in 2015, 2016. They won a Giants Cup. So, pretty big deal, of course. Now, of course, the most titles from those winning the Copa Interamerica was actually the Argentine side Independiente, with 3 of them. So, pretty cool stuff, though. Now, for some of their most notable players, you have Luis Roberto Alves, their top goal scorer in club history, of course, a big major player in that, of course. Then you have Cuauhtémoc Blanco. He's one of their iconic players, 153 goals, and a Club America icon. Then you have Hector Zelada, one of their most well-known goalkeepers, of course. Another Club America icon. He was mainly a big part for Club America. He played 294 matches for Club America. It was a big part of their success in the 80s. Cristobal Ortega, one of their great midfielders, one of the greatest midfielders in Club America's history. He played 608 matches for the club, which is, he has the most appearances of any player who has played for Club America. It was a big part of their success in the 1980s for Club America. Been a big part of their success of the 1980s. You have Carlos Reynoso, who is one of the most talented players to ever play for the club. He's considered to be one of the greatest foreign players in Mexican football history. And he was definitely widely considered to be the best player to ever play for the club. Then you have Christian Benitez. Another star, Henry Martin, is their current captain. Henry Martin's got 116 goals. He's their major captain. Alfredo Tena. Another major defender, of course. Captain Fury is what they call him. But he played for his entire career here, and he's the second most capped player in the club's history, of course. And he also was a manager as well. And there are many more iconic legends of Club America. But these are the ones I picked up for today, of course. So Club America, plenty of icons that played for this iconic Mexican club. So that wraps up everything we need to know about Club America. So, very historic club here in Mexico. So, I'm looking forward to that, of course. So let's go ahead and cover outside what our scenery looks like outside our window here this afternoon. So, beautiful scenery out here today. So, big stuff going on here today as well. So, absolute crazy stuff, of course. Club America definitely have a lot of history. So, one of the big things, though, about Mexico, and of course, one of the big things about Mexican football is, of course, this year has been pretty interesting for the Liga MX, obviously. This past year in the Ipacha, the last season, of course, the first half of the season. Toluca won the league, 37 points. Tigres was second. Club America was actually fourth in it. 34 points, just 3 points behind the league champions. Now, Guadalajara finished in sixth. So, pretty interesting stuff, of course. But the Mexican League definitely has some other really big clubs in Mexico. Guadalajara and Club America are like the two biggest ones, but there's some other really important clubs in the Liga MX. In northern Mexico, you can find Monterrey up there in FCF Monterrey, one of the more historic clubs in Mexico. And their rivalry with Tigres is actually one of the most heated derbies in Mexico. And they also have a lot of very important fans, of course. And they have some really interesting players that play for the club. So, pretty important stuff here in Mexico, of course. So we'll be making our way to our final stop in Guadalajara for one last leg, of course. The scenery here is still pretty crazy, though. The scenery is really pretty in this part of Mexico, of course. Yeah, the scenery is pretty cool in this part, obviously. So we'll have our second stop here very shortly. We'll land here, and then we'll prepare for the last leg into Guadalajara. So, now, of course, for me, for this weekend, Everton, the team I support, England, will be playing this weekend. Again, our next match is Manchester United on the 23rd of February. So, gotta wait a week until Everton play the next match. Manchester United, not looking forward to it. Manchester United's been really good this year. Unexpectedly good this year. Fourth in the league. Everton doing pretty well this year, all things considered. 8th place, not complaining. I mean, it could be much worse. They could be battling relegation like they have been the last few years. So, very happy with that. Could have been much, much worse. So, So I want to ask you guys an important question. If you guys have any really cool plans for the weekend, if you guys have some really neat plans that you guys are thinking about wanting to do for the week. So, So some pretty big stuff going on, of course. We're going to be very interestingly enough for other soccer news, of course, in England, obviously. Burnley Wolves are definitely going down, and the question is who's going to go down the 18 spots. I know West Ham are actually doing much better now. They only lost one in the last 5 matches for West Ham United, so who knows? Maybe Forest get relegated?
Someone was detected at your front door.
Oh, sorry about that. Or even crazier, what if Tottenham fall into relegation this season? Yes, a time where Tottenham Hotspur get relegated. Imagine being one of the first of the Big 6 clubs to not been relegated from the Premier League become relegated. Because previously, the only clubs that have never been relegated from the Premier League were Everton, Arsenal, Tottenham, Liverpool, Manchester United, and Chelsea were the clubs that have never been relegated from the Premier League. They're only one of the 6 clubs that have never been relegated from the Premier League. So imagine a timeline where Tottenham fell first. Not Everton, but Tottenham have fallen first. That would be pretty tragic for the fans in North London. That would be very tragic for them. Be one heck of a fall if that were to happen. I don't think it's likely. I think Forest would be more likely than that, but who knows? That would be a crazy timeline. What would be more interesting is who will replace the next 3 teams, though, in England. Middlesbrough have now overtaken Coventry for the number 1 spot. Coventry still are number 2, then the championship playoff right now, if it were to end. The number 3 would have to be whoever takes the playoff spot. Ipswich Town to return back to the Premier League after being relegated last year. Hull, who hasn't been around for a couple of years now. Millwall and Wrexham, and both of those have never been in the Premier League. Millwall only spent 1 season in the top division. Wrexham has never been up there before. Yes, we could see Wrexham in the Premier League. Imagine back-to-back promotions. That would be one of the most unlikely stories ever. So, who knows? Should be absolutely crazy, to say for the least. So our airport is going to come up pretty soon. I'm going to start descending to around 6,000 feet. So we're going to go 6. We're going to go around 1,000. So we're going to descend there. Mm-hmm. So we're going to send down to 1, 2. Should be pretty fun, though. So I can't wait for the baseball season to finally come back. Baseball will be coming back pretty soon, so I'll see which baseball series we're going to be doing for the weekend. Apparently the baseball season will be started. I wonder when the MLB season is going to finally start. Apparently the first game is going to be the Giants and Yankees will be the first game for baseball season. So that could be what we might do. But I guess the first stream that we're going to have to do for the weekend for baseball, opening day week, I want to do if it's favorable for general aviation, so I think I could do Diamondbacks and Dodgers, which would probably be the one I would do, but for the 26th. We can do Diamondbacks and Dodgers. Should be a fun trip to the desert. Should be a good one. It's a rivalry, so I think I could do that one. But yeah, we'll do plenty of baseball stuff too for the summer. Like I said, there'll be plenty of content we'll be doing for this series, so that's one of the best parts about this series is we got plenty of stuff to do. There's no shortage of teams and no shortage of matchups we'll be picking. So we're gonna head our way to our second stop. So we'll be making over to here, of course. Here's, guys, we're about to make our final stop here. Carazana. So we're actually here in the region of Jalisco, here in Mexico. Now, one interesting thing about this state in Mexico, it's one of the 32 federal entities in Mexico. This one is actually one of the most economically and culturally important states in Mexico. And the reason why it's important is because a lot of the traits in Mexican culture actually originated here. Mariachi, tequila, birria, and jaripeo all originated here in this state of Mexico, of course. So yeah, all the tequila you've been drinking and all that stuff, and tequila originates from here. So we'll just park here. But a lot of the culture tradition you see here in Mexico originates in this region. Mariachi, of course. All the clothing dance. Tequila is originating here, which comes from the mezcal. It's produced with strict standards from the agave plant. And of course, the food. Birria has been popular with which is barbacoa with goat, beef, or lamb. But pretty neat state, of course. Neat area in Mexico. A lot of tradition in this region, of course. So we'll be getting ready to move on to our final leg of the trip. We'll be making our way over to Mike Mike Zulu Papa. So we'll be making our way to our final stop here. So our altitude for this one, of course, will be cruising around 8,500 feet. So we'll be cruising around there. So let's go ahead and, as we climb up to 8,500 feet, we're going to go ahead and talk about our last club we're going to be covering here for our stream. This is Chivas, or CD Guadalajara, known as Club Deportivo Guadalajara, or simply a lot of us know it better as Chivas. This Mexican football club based in Guadalajara has been around since 1906. It's one of the 10 founding members of the Mexican League and one of 7 clubs that have never been relegated from the Mexican League. Chivas is the only football club in Mexico that does not sign foreign players unless they are of Mexican descent, and they have historically relied on homegrown talent that have been the launching pad for many international players that have been successful, including that of Javier Hernandez, Carlos Vela, Carlos Solicito, among others. Domestically, Chivas are one of the most successful clubs in Mexico, winning 12 league titles, 7 Copa Mexica titles, 7 Campeón de Campeón titles, which is the domestic Super Cup, and 1 Super Cup MX. They also hold the league record for the longest winning streak with 8 straight wins in 2010, and internationally they've won 2 CONCACAF Champions Cup, as well as the runners-up in the 2010 Copa Libertadores. That's right, they almost won a South American title too. And they are actually considered to be one of the most popular clubs in Mexico. Very rich culture and very rich tradition here in Guadalajara. And look at the scene right here, guys. Let's take a look at this. Isn't that a beautiful picture? This lake to our west, by the way, this lake, by the way, is Lago de Chapala. It's Lake Chapala. This lake, by the way, in this part of Mexico, is a pretty shallow lake. It's only about 23 feet in depth. The mean depth is 23 feet. Its maximum depth is 34 feet. This is actually Mexico's largest freshwater lake since the desiccation of Lake Texcoco in the early 17th century. So this is actually now Mexico's largest freshwater lake in Mexico. And it's home to quite a few animal species too. So that's basically this lake. It's Mexico's largest freshwater lake. So we're gonna go. So the crest and colors of Chivas have had quite a bit of an interesting history. Their 3 colors are red, white, and blue, which represented the founder's favorite team, the Belgian club Club Brugge, borrowing the vertical stripes and color schemes of the Brugge strip of that era. Of course, this was before they changed their colors. Club Brugge changed their colors to the blue and black. But the crest was actually CD, of course, was the original crest, which we have here. Is their second crest with CG in their initials. Of course, then they changed that one in 1917 to the one that we know of today, which is based on the Marquette temporary with vertical rectangle with blue border and the CG. But of course, the modern crest, the one we see here today, was designed back in 1923 using the coat of arms from the city of Guadalajara. and of course was complemented by a blue circle in the words Guadalajara. So basically, this is very similar to the modern crest they now wear nowadays. Now, interestingly enough, along with its crest and colors, is its nicknames, and of course, Chivas was actually claimed to fame back in 1948 when Guadalajara won at the Park Oblatos. And despite the win, the team's performances were criticized by attending fans, claiming that they played like Chiva Locas, crazy goats. And during the next day, of course, then they had a sports column, a game of races. The goats win 1-0, and the name Chivas was used by rival fans to mock the club. But of course, they embraced the nickname. They ended up embracing the nickname the Goats. But yeah, they embraced their nicknames. So yeah, they embraced the nickname. Of course, one very interesting thing about Guadalajara is its transfer policy. And this is why I consider them to be the athletic club of Mexico. What I mean by this is, if you guys remember back during our episode on Athletic Club versus Real Sociedad, we covered Athletic Club's unique policy of only signing players from the Basque region. Well, this time it's not nearly as limited, but they signed Mexican-only talents from Mexico. And the way they did it was that it was established back in 1943, just before the start of the Liga Mayor season. Many clubs in the primary division have been relying on foreign talent to be competitive, so much that Mexican Football Federation began the policy to limit foreign talent. Of course, Guadalajara, in an effort to distinguish themselves from their rival Atlas, included the total restriction of foreign and naturalized talent in their own policy. And yes, they are Mexican-only talents. Club president at the time, Inigo Lopez, claimed to be the one responsible. He later stated, Este club vencerá o morirá hasta el final a base del talento y el esfuerzo de 11 jugadores mexicanos. Which translates to, this club will win or die until the end based on talent and effort of 11 Mexican players. And of course, this club ideology is touted to Mexican nationalism and has been praised for promoting both local talent and national talent. However, it's also been criticized for being discriminatory, especially in regard to former subsidiary Chivas USA. Of course, for dual nationals, historically the policy would only allow players born in Mexico or declared for the national Mexican team to be eligible. However, over time, Guadalajara slowly softened their transfer restrictions. They have signed Mexican Americans in the past, and for Mexican Americans, they have to be noted to declare for the Mexican national team before signing Guadalajara. So yes, you can sign Mexican American players, but they have to declare for the Mexican national team. But that policy is still valid to this day, as well. Of course, the main stadium that Chivas have played is the Estadio Akron, is their current home ground, built back in 2010, of course. This home ground is used by Chivas. It has a seating capacity of 49,000 people. Opened back in July 2010. It's hosted the first leg of the finals of the Copa Libertadores. It's hosted the 2011 Pan American Games opening and closing ceremonies. And of course, it's now going to host some of the matches in the 2026 FIFA World Cup. But it's hosted quite a few matches, of course. It's also hosted a few concerts. But it's definitely a pretty modern venue, worthy of Chivas' glory, of course. Now, while Chivas definitely have a rivalry with Club America, it's their biggest rival, they also have a massive derby with their local rivals, Atlas, who is another major club in the city. Known as the Clásico Tapatio, it's the oldest derby in Mexican football, dating back to 1916, and it's been a big part of both fan bases. In the early stages of the rivalry, Guadalajara supporters stated the Del players of Atlas by calling Margaritas. In reaction, a group of Atlas supporters reacted them by claiming their fans to be rivals Chivas Locas, Crazy Ghosts. That's where the nickname came from. And that the Chivas players at the time considered to be a massive insult. However, over time, as the club became more popular, it became a term of endearment. They used to share the stadium, the Estadio Jalisco, and that lasted until 2010, where they got their own ground, of course. But that said, this is a very important derby in Mexican football. So far in the series, however, Guadalajara leads the series in 285 meetings with 106 wins, 87 losses to Atlas, and 93 draws. It's a very old rivalry, very proud part of Mexican football. Very big derby in Mexico. They take this one fair. In Mexico, they take this one very seriously. So, in terms of their support, they're one of the most popular clubs in all of Mexico. And despite the fact they've only won 4 titles since its heyday in 1970, the general enthusiasm that still lingers over is also still here today, and the reason is because they still sign players from local talents. They mainly develop them in their academy, of course. They have 3 supporter groups: La Irreverente, Bar Insurgencia, and Legion 1908 are their 3 major supporter groups of Guadalajara. In terms of their club honors, here's their club honors. Their 12 Mexican titles, which is tied second, along with Toluca. Their 4 Copa Mexicos, their Copa Mexico Cups, 7 Campeón de Campeones, which is a record. And that basically is the domestic Super Cup between the Aperture and Classic tournaments. That's their Super Cup and the Super Cup MX in 2016. They also won the CONCACAF Gold Cup twice, and they almost won the Copa Libertadores once. They almost won one, which would have been crazy. They won on both continents, which would be absolutely insane. But lots of rich history, of course. And finally, of course, they have excellent Mexican talents. There are so many great Mexican talents that play for Guadalajara over its rich history, of course. Their top scorer, Omar Bravo. Jaime Gomez is another well-known and iconic player. Then you got Juan Josso, who's their most player who's played the most in the club history. You got Salvador Reyes, who's their second leading all-time goal scorer. Guillermo Tigre Sepulveda, another iconic player for Chivas. Carlos Salcido, who's achieved major international success. Oswaldo Sanchez. And then you have Ramon Ramirez as well, and plenty of other great Mexican talents that played for Chivas throughout its rich history, of course. So that covers the history of Chivas Guadalajara. So that's it, everyone. So that concludes our last slide for today. So that's it, everyone. So that covers all our slides. So we'll prepare for the next one for the North London Derby. That's going to be coming up next. So I'll get the slides done for this weekend. But yeah, they're one of the clubs that have never been relegated. So here, guys, Guadalajara's in here, so we can finally get our way to Guadalajara. We're gonna cut down the altitude a little bit to 6,500 feet. So let's go ahead and. So Guadalajara, for those who don't know, is Mexico's third largest city. It is popular. It's actually the most populous city in Mexico with 1.38 million people. Its metro area is the third largest in the country with 5.2 million. Its population density is the second highest in Mexico with 10,000 people per square kilometer. Only Mexico City surpasses it. It's home to 100 most productive, globally competitive cities in the world. There are plenty of landmarks, including the Guadalajara Cathedral, the Templo Expiatorio, and the UNESCO World Heritage Site Hospacito Cabanas are its main site, and it's been around since 1532. It was founded in 1542 by Cristobal de Onate, named after the similar named city in Spain, of course. But this is a very important city, the Guadalajara. But one really cool thing, though, of course, one very interesting thing about Guadalajara, it has its own specific dish, the torta ahogada, salted butter roll speared with refried beans with fried pork cut to pieces, all in tomato sauce seasoned with spices. It can be eaten with onions reduced in lemon and hot sauce. Other dishes include the birria, which is barbacoa. They also pozole, which is soup with hominy, pork, chicken topped with cabbage, radishes, and minced onions. And a local dessert called the Bianco, which is fruit salad with a variety of fruits dropped in small cubes, drenched with crema, and topped with granola. Shredded coconut, raisins, and other stuff too. So beautiful stuff here in this part of Mexico, of course. So, very excited for the last leg of the trip. So, looking forward to all of your times here. But yeah, tomorrow is Valentine's Day, so should be interesting to see what Valentine's Day is going to come up for you guys. So, really cool stuff. So this is Guadalajara. This is one of the bigger cities in Mexico. Plenty of people have been around this city during their times here in Mexico. So here we go. So there is the Estadio Jalisco. That's the home of Atlas, the local rivals. So, that is Guadalajara. So we're now heading to the home ground of Chivas. The Estadio Akron. But here it is, guys. The Estadio Akron's coming up soon. On the home ground, Chivas. Then we'll turn right, and we'll wrap up the stream. I hope you guys enjoyed this fight. This was definitely a pretty interesting trip into Mexico. Not really a place I've done too much flying, so we'll fly here in. So there it is, the Estadio Akron, dead ahead of us. So here we go, guys. We're going to go ahead and turn off autopilot. We're going to land. So here we go. Our final stop. And we're done. Nice. And that's it, everyone. That wraps up our adventure today in the Boss PC6. So that wraps everything up. We're going to go ahead and wrap everything up. So we'll be heading off. Today we'll find someone to raid. So before we start, we're going to go ahead and say hello to our next streamer. We're going to raid MSFS Official. They're doing a Valentine's Day community flights. So we'll see you guys on Sunday. We'll be meeting you back for Bryce Canyon National Park in Utah. So we'll see you guys then. Take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Goodbye, everyone, and take care. See you later.